Uh, It's a little awkward because in lack of a chairman, I guess we're supposed to call the meeting to order, so I'm calling the meeting to order. It says here on the agenda, roll call of members.
Just everyone identify themselves.
Everybody's here. That being said, would you please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, members, will y'all please stand for the swearing in? All right, this is going to be the oath of office. Please repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
and laws of the United States
and laws of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of the State of Louisiana
and the Constitution and laws of the State of Louisiana
and the Parish of Ascension,
and the Parish of Ascension,
and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge
and I will faithfully and impartially discharge
and perform all the duties
and perform all the duties
incumbent upon me
incumbent upon me
as a member of the Ascension Parish
as a member of the Ascension Parish
Planning Commission Appeals Board,
Planning Commission Appeals Board,
according to the best of my ability
according to the best of my ability
and understanding,
and understanding.
so help me God.
So help me God.
All right, you guys are sworn in.
First, I would like to, we need to elect an officer, elect a chairman, and I would like to nominate Mr. Fritz Anglade for chairman.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I think, thank you. I'm not quite sure, but thank you. All right. I guess we're here to hear an appeal. And I guess at the time, on the agenda is Brookstone. So we'll hear from Brookstone.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
My name's David Cohn. I'm an attorney here for America Homeland LLC, who is the developer of this Brookstone subdivision project.
I'm sorry, would you give me your name again, please?
David Cohn.
Daniel Cohn?
David.
David, I'm sorry, David.
Yes, sir. I answer to a lot of things, Mr. Anglade, but you can't hurt it. Just do the best you can.
I can understand that. With a last name like Anglade, I sure can appreciate that.
I bet you can. As you stated, we're here for an appeal. The appeal is by America Homeland LLC from a public hearing held February 10th, 2016, where the preliminary plat for Brookstone subdivision was not approved by the Ascension Parish Planning and Zoning Commission. I think the focus at that time, based on my observation of the comments that I viewed from, I was not there, but I viewed the hearing proceeding, focused on drainage and traffic, principally traffic on Parker Road, and the drainage focused on watering yards on some households along Parker Road, and a particular drainage problem on a tract I've mentioned in my materials is D1. The lady who spoke at the hearing was a lady, I believe her name was Dawn, and it may be Alamond. And this is just to kind of get a frame of reference here.
Please, thank you.
Brookstone subdivision is outlined here, assuming it were to be built. This is Parker Road, intersection of 920. These, of course, are the houses along Parker Road. Some of the residents showed up to discuss flooding that they were having in their rear yards along Parker Road during periods of high rain. All of the property is right here. It's outlined in yellow. It's about a 4.5 acre tract, I think she may have said, or I got that somewhere. It's right here. There's a subdivision. It either may be under construction or nearing completion. I'm not sure. Parker Place subdivision number 2. Second filing. Original filing for Parker Place is right here. The original filing of Parker Place is going to be significant from the drainage standpoint because Brookstone subdivision, according to our drainage improvement study, will be tying into existing drainage improvements that will lead into this pond here and then flow downstream this direction. About this much of the Brookstone subdivision, say the front 2/3, go this way, the westerly 1/3 will flow into this Black Bayou stream, and the easterly 2/3 will flow through this drainage improvements into Parker Place subdivision, down through something called Marty Barat Ditch, which I understand is a smaller canal that opens up into a larger canal, large enough you can put a boat in it, I'm told, somewhere downstream. And that's part of the outfall. You're going to hear some talk about the outfall and an improvement to the outfall. The developer of Parker Place subdivision is studying now as a solution that was proposed recently by, as we know, on March 23rd by members of the parish engineering staff who studied and identified problems that they feel like will be necessary to try and cure these issues. These are curative processes that apparently were taking place on February 10th when this subdivision came up for approval. We weren't fully aware of the extent of what they had done, but Mr. Murphy will be mentioning what those things are as well. And he'll discuss as well what these yellow portions here just on this map, those are also drainage improvements that are involved in the curative process that are taking place now based on the recommendations of the parish that will involve this improvement, and an outfall improvement that's being studied at the present time, that if this subdivision is approved, the America Homeland developer has apparently had some discussion with the developer of Parker Place as to sharing in some of those costs, once they get the engineering numbers and what needs to be done. Nonetheless, what we know is since March 23rd, there have been some movement along the lines of, I think, what had been suggested in the parish engineer's letter. We saw in a letter from the parish engineer on February 10th where she suggested to America Homeland that in their construction plans in their design of Brookstone, to not exacerbate the downstream problem. So for now, what I understood were the big problems on the drainage that took place along here, dealt with the backyards of some homes on Parker Place, and then there was this isolated event here. I say isolated property. I do remember Dawn mentioning she had a neighbor that was having some problems too, maybe not as severe as her, but what I understand is Dawn Almon's shed had actually taken some water back in August of 2014, and I'm not sure exactly. I think that maybe was her big event, and she may have had other events since that time too that have created problems for her. So much of what's taking place down here is an attempt to cure, when I say taking place down here, much of what the city or the parish had recommended take place to the Parker Place developer is improvements to these drainage facilities and expansion of this outfall to let this water move through a little bit better. So from the standpoint of where we're at and where we are situated and where the issues seem to rise at the commission hearing. He pointed those out. The I mean, it's easy to say this is simple, and it is simple, but it's sometimes not so simple. From a parish ordinance standpoint, the oversimplification is, which I think is actually the truth, is that the application for preliminary plat by America Homeland met all the criteria of the parish. The staff approved it. The parish engineer approved the drainage improvement study. The only kink in the drainage improvement approval was a comment, or was a series of comments that the parish engineer made, Rhonda Bro, wherein she told Derek Murphy, the engineer for America Homeland, that in his design of Brookstown, not to exacerbate the flooding problems that are taking place downstream. She didn't tell him, go solve those problems, but she also told him, you should commiserate, I'm paraphrasing now, but you need to commiserate with the engineer for Parker Place to find out, I think what she was telling him is get with him and make sure what you're doing doesn't hurt what he's doing. And I think that process actually did take place post February the 10th, even though it was not a condition for the approval of the preliminary plat. So we had, according to the ordinance, a drainage study and a traffic study, both of them cleared. And that was our responsibility at that time. There was also some discussion, and there was a lot of debate that took place during that hearing about, well, what happens during the construction phase? Well, what I think Rhonda Bro was, the point she was trying to make at that time was to say, when you get a drainage improvement study, things more likely than not will change. The representative for America Homeland at that hearing, Mr. Berger, said you're right. Because once you get on the ground, and I think an example he may have used, he said, if you see a tree that has to be moved that will affect the hydrology, well, then that may change some calculations. So what some of this discussion that was going to take place about drainage was going to take place when the construction plans for the subdivision were prepared. And it was determined, I suppose, what Mr. Murphy, as the design engineer for America Homeland and the subdivision, was going to be doing, and to whether it exacerbated or made worse the downstream flooding that was taking place, or the yardways along Parker Road. There are some things we knew going in, and Mr. Murphy will talk about that. I mean, I heard several comments from residents who talked about how the drainage improvements were overgrown. The existing drainage improvements were overgrown, unkept, and those are being attributed even by the residents as causes of some of their drainage issues, to suggest that if you clean these up, then maybe it gets better. It can't help but get better. When you take the drainage improvements and you keep them in the condition that they're designed for. I'm going to ask Mr. Murphy, because drainage was such a hot topic there, I want him to have a short presentation about the drainage study, what his conclusions were, what it showed, what he based it on. And because I think what got lost in some ways at this commission hearing, I mean, the wheels fall off sometimes. And I think where part of this got lost there is that, I mean, I submitted a binder of the documentation that went into that. And that binder is about this thick. So there's probably over 1,000 pages in there. Of those pages, probably 750 of it went to a drainage study, then a revised drainage study. We had a drainage study. There were comments by staff. We went back. We made changes. We did the things that they asked us to do. And then the revised study was finally approved on that day, February the 10th. And so I want you gentlemen to understand that this wasn't a single piece of paper that just says, we're not going to hurt anybody. I mean, there was legitimate engineering that went into this and calculations, and there was a basis for reaching the conclusion that there were no adverse impact on the drainage side, just like there was no adverse impact on the traffic side. But drainage seemed to have been what was hot on that day. So, Mr. Murphy, if you don't mind, would you come up and make a short statement? Or as long as you think you need.
Or short.
My name is Derek Murphy with Quality Engineering and Surveying, representing America Homeland for the Brookstone. A couple things just wanted to spell out is that we did do a traffic study that was approved by the parish, and then we also did a drainage impact study.
What goes into a traffic study?
What goes into a traffic study? Well, I'm not a traffic engineer per se, but I will tell you from my understanding is that traffic counts in this area, basically they count all the cars on the stretch of highways.
When you say this area, you're talking about the subdivision area you're
The
proposing?
subdivision area, yes, sir.
All right.
Intersections are counted, roadways are counted, and then those amount of cars get plugged into what's existing today, what's projected to tomorrow, and then what's also projected coming out of this development. Then they do turn lane analysis on the intersections, and they grade those intersections from a B, C, D, or F type grade. And you know the way the ordinance is that we basically aren't allowed to drop those grades per se. And so if the subdivision comes in and says, we're not dropping a grade on these intersections, now the intersections are chosen by both parish or the state or whoever controls that traffic study, depending on what roadway we're coming out on. So they tell us what the extents are, what the limits are. There's a threshold A, threshold B. There's multiple types of different studies also, depending on the size of your development as well and the trips that it produces. So there is a lot of information that goes into a traffic study. Everything is analyzed, and then it's determined on what improvements, if needed, needs to happen at those intersections, at the entrance road, and things like that.
I didn't mean to sidetrack you.
No, absolutely.
I was curious about
Right.
the study
So
itself.
it's an actual on the ground, counting the cars and that kind of thing, 24 hours, 48 hours during school times. In other words, you can't go out there in the summer because obviously school traffic is different. And so it's thorough, and it's set up by, national standards with that.
If I could ask, are these studies conducted over a period of time, like over several weeks, or and picking peak and peak hours, low hours?
Usually, if they have DOTD studies, in other words, if, you see those boxes on the side of the road with the little black cords around.
Right.
If that kind of information is available, then yes, those information is obtained. If it's not, I think it's a 3-day process. They pick it's usually not a Monday or Friday, so it's usually Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because that's when you have some people are off on Monday, some people are off on Friday. So they make sure it's that midweek type traffic. And it's a snapshot, yes, sir.
Is that what went into yours?
Yes, sir. And
Now, who does the study?
this study was actually performed by Neil Schaefer, which is a company out of Baton Rouge. They're actually a very large company, but we use the office out of Baton Rouge.
What grade did this area come in at?
Let's see. At 929, the roadway announcement form, levels of B, existing and once we build out.
At what
B.
intersection?
That's what I'm looking at here, the roof.
A B? And what does that mean, Lance? That's high, low?
Though A is the best, B is second best, all the way down to an
Alright.
F.
I got a question.
That's
another
actually,
question.
I'm sorry,
Hold on.
yes, sir.
When Parker was built, Hobart, what was that? What was that grade?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Okay.
You had a question, Ken?
Yeah, I was asking what intersection with 929, was that at Highway 40?
That's the actual
42?
929 and our proposed street.
Or at your street?
Yes, now, looking at,
What about the adjacent, I mean, I'd be concerned about the intersection at Parker.
yes, sir, 929 and Parker Road. Looking at, existing is an A, westbound is a B, 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 B. Look, the overall intersection is a B. And
Now, is
then,
is this all during the course of the day? Because I was on Parker Road today at 3:30, and there are cars lined up on both sides of the road, backed up.
no, sir, this is,
Wait, for school traffic.
this is from
of course.
6 to 8,
Okay,
and from 6 to 8 in the morning, I think from 4 to 6 in the afternoon, so it's peak times.
peak times.
Yes, sir. So, looking at the intersection at 929 and Parker, it looks like it's a level B. Yes, sir.
And that'd be an average over the course of the times that the traffic count was taken,
Correct, yes,
as
sir.
an average.
Which was during school hours. I understand there's a school right there, and everyone's concerned about that as well.
Now, excuse me, but now you can get back to your, to
Yes.
your original proposal. We can get off of traffic for a moment.
Well, and I just want to also let you know, this traffic study was done in accordance to all the local, state, federal ordinances, and we do have a letter of approval by this parish that
Do you have the dates of the study?
on when data was actually collected.
Right.
The date on the study is January 5th, 2016. Binder, that's on the cover sheet.
Okay.
Date of the opinion, that may not be the date it was out there.
Yes, I'm looking for.
Yeah. In other words, when were these counts actually
The
taken?
counts were done in November 10th,
November 10th. And that was
2015.
on the calendar. I don't know what date it is. So it was just only a one-day study? And November 10th was a Tuesday.
They do have 24-hour tubes. That was November 10th, November 11th. It looks like November 12th, possibly.
That's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Yes.
Now you can get back to your
Yes,
original
sir.
proposal, please.
If I can remember where I'm at. So anyway, so the other thing, I just want to talk about the drainage study. We did a drainage study in accordance to, again, local ordinances. We did a lot of calculations. We understood that there were some issues in this area. And I know a lot of, one of the things that really got brought up was, are you using Parker Place's drainage impact study? Because obviously, there's some concerns there. But one thing we need to make sure of is the drainage that's coming off of this property. We, by ordinance, we have to design that drainage for a 10-year design storm. By policy, we had a 25-year design storm. And then, of course, there's the 100-year storm that y'all all hear about. Oh, that's the base flood elevation, that kind of in this area.
How significant an event is a 10-year event or storm? I mean, is that 6 inches?
It's 8.6 inches per 24-hour period. And then 25-year, or 100 years, 12.6, I believe, for a 24-hour period. So on this particular subdivision, looking at the discharge as it goes into the subsurface drainage of Parker Place, we actually choked back that drainage to make 10-year post-development flow, which means after the project is developed, less than as it flows today, 25-year the same, and 100-year. We want to make sure that we even choke back the 100-year that's going into this drainage system. We want to make sure that we weren't having any issues on that drainage. So we over-detained, if you will, or went above and beyond the requirements. Now, I can tell you, we spent a lot of time looking at that. The only thing we really used, and we didn't really use it from the drainage study, we used it from the construction plans, was the pipe size and things like that, and also the tailwater as it's produced in part of the construction plans. So that's what controlled our study, just at that one point. But one thing is, we made sure that every design storm post-develop, which means after it's built, is less than pre as it's going in.
Repeat that, please.
The design storms post-development flows, it means after it's built, in other words, we put a detention pond in. The water, as well as I do, coming off of concrete, houses and roads, that water's going to run faster. That's the whole purpose of the detention pond type system. It takes on the water, it holds it, and it lets it trickle out. We wanted to make sure that trickle was less than what it is today.
That's out of the retention pond.
Yes, sir.
What-
And we're
what-
tying to a
What do
30.
y'all have? What was y'all original outflow? What did you count? How many gallons?
As it sits today, going for a 10-year design flow of 17 CFS.
How much?
17. Post-develop, is 9.32.
So y'all
We reducing
y'all
it.
prepared to choke it
Yes.
back, is that correct?
That's what we wanted to do. We wanted to make sure that we, again, go above and beyond ordinance just to make sure that we didn't hurt anyone in this area.
Now, you're not adding a retention pond to Brookstone? You utilize
Yes, sir.
it?
We have 2 detention ponds at Brookstone.
Oh, you have 2 in there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, my maps didn't show that. I thought you were strictly using the one that's already in place.
Oh, no, sir. We're detaining, by ordinance, we're going to detain our flows on our site.
Okay. Well, I hate to back up. One thing I didn't quite understand during Mr. Cohn's presentation, he showed some improvements on the back of the site going into Parker Place.
Well,
So I assume that meant that some of the flow was going to go into their retention pond, but evidently that's not correct.
yes, sir, it is.
Oh, it is?
But it's after it's detained. See, what happens is, right now, from about this point where this B is, this way, drains towards, see these blue lines that you see here? That is the pipes that's installed per Parker.
Now, it drains through open ditches,
Well,
right?
well, it just goes over land. This
Oh, I
blue
see.
right here is actually subsurface pipes. It's a 30-inch pipe, okay? It's designed to take our water.
So the storm drain under the road,
Yes, sir.
basically. Okay.
Yes, sir. So, but what we're doing is, instead of just using Parker Places, we have a detention pond here, and we have a detention pond here. We have
Okay.
2 detention ponds, because per ordinance, we're detaining at this point right here. In fact, we're choking it
what? I'm
way down.
sorry?
We're detaining it.
Okay.
We're choking it way down from what it is today, at this location right here. So, this is designed to handle pre-development flows from our site, which means as it is today, and we're going to reduce it further than what it is today for both a 10, 25, and the 100-year coming into here. Now, that is per our drainage study. Now, part of the drainage study approval letter asked us to reach out to the engineer for Parker Place. Okay? We have done that. One thing they did, the reason we show these 2 subsurface systems is the design included, I'm sure y'all seen those in the parking lot where you got a little metal grate.
You want to give these to me?
Can we?
Yeah, that was the email, go to the attachment.
I'll give them the coding.
It's the attachment. It's the attachment from the parish. Gave their suggestions, recommendations.
March 23rd. There's no pictures?
Follow up and tell you what it's about.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's fixing to tell you.
All right. In January, I believe, of this year, all right, so what they had at the end of these two pipes right here by Ms. Alamont's property was a grate inlet. In other words, you've seen that in the parking lot. They got the little 2 foot by 2 foot metal grates. Well, these are 30-inch and 24-inch pipes. Well, it takes sometimes those little 2 foot by 2 foot grates get clogged up and so forth. So what they did, they actually came in and they cut holes into the side of the boxes to allow more water in, okay, during a rain event. And if you look,
On what item number?
well, it's item number 8 on this sheet right here, where it says Shadows of Ascension. And bring it up on the gizmo.
Mr. Murphy, were you involved with Parker Place or Shadows of Ascension?
No, sir, I was not the engineer of that.
Okay.
All I did was I reached out to a fellow engineer and asked his opinion and asked what they were doing.
In your studies, you determined in your drainage studies that the property, the raw property as it is now, drains to the back, or the 2/3 of it drains to the back, and it winds up in that retention pond, Parker Place?
Yes, sir. And then so, as per ordinance, we designed it to reduce the flows.
So you
Yes,
can
sir.
continue to use it, but then you're going to add additional retention ponds?
Yes, sir. As per the drainage impact study approval letter, they asked us to reach out to the other engineering company who was out here who did Parker Place. And if you look on item number 8 on this sheet here, this is actually I guess an email from Mr. Bob Turner with the parish on March 23rd, talking about some of the issues out here and also what they've been working on. And you can see here, item number 8 says the tops of the 3 inlets have been modified to provide for a weir opening in lieu of the originally designed and installed grate top. This was done by the developer of Parker Place 1 due to the grates being clogged up during past rainstorms. This has helped to reduce the flooding on the adjacent private property. So that's some ideas that were floated. And then in the back, items A through D, we won't get into all of them, but it does say item C talks about installing flap gates along the road right here, which if you look at the email from the other engineer, you'll see that they're actually about to install those flap gates, because that was one of the items that they committed to the parish to
It's like a
do.
check valve? You might-
Basically, it's a check
Check
valve,
valve,
yes,
okay.
sir. Because what's happening is, they say in Parker Place Pond, water surface rises and backs up into this
So a
property.
check valve would prevent that.
Yes, sir.
So
It
it
sure
allows the
will.
water to flow into their retention pond, but not
Yes,
back.
sir.
Okay.
And then, of course, it says on here, the last option is to construct
Has this been done
the
or is
flap.
proposed?
The weir has been done. The flap gates are about to be done. Yes, sir.
By whom?
It would be the developer of Parker Place and their
Lance,
engineer.
When was Parker Place 1 developed?
Long ago. They're still building it there now.
Some idea, 2
Just
years
guess.
ago, 5 years ago?
Huh? 2014, about 2 years ago.
2014.
Yes, sir.
So it's y'all contention that the problem that these homeowners have on Hobart is a direct result of Parker Place 1, is that correct? Is that y'all contention?
No, sir. We're saying that the engineer is doing things in here in order to help alleviate Miss Alamo.
But the flooding that you mentioned earlier, Mr. Cohen did, are you saying that the developer of Parker Place needs to rectify that problem? I mean, is that where the problem exists? It doesn't exist on yours, you
doesn't.
don't have anything built yet.
That's correct.
Ms. what?
So it's existing today, yes. sir.
But our property, that is the property that's gonna be Brookstone, let's don't lose sight of the fact that it is draining through these systems already. This isn't something we're gonna create. It's
Oh,
there.
I understand that.
It's there.
But as we speak now, the bone of contention is Parker Place, the developer of that particular property, is where the problem, if there is a problem, lies with that development as we speak today. Is that correct?
Because the parish is engaged with that developer to make changes.
Right.
Is that Lance, is that a fact? Or somebody from the parish?
Yes, sir, that's correct, yes.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know that the developer of Parker Place says it's all my fault. Ms. Bro even said in the hearing, she made a comment, she's the parish engineer, she made the comment that, you know, it's kind of complicated. There's like 5 subdivisions that are involved in this, and I think what she meant by that is there's water coming from other places, but it's flowing into or through Parker Place, so that's where the focus is right now on what do we do about it. Ms. Allman had a flooding event in 2014, I think, so her complaints rose to the surface on what it takes to solve it, and now there's an effort being made to solve it. So I think that's the
Is that right, Lance?
Yes, sir.
Lance,
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I just gotta make sure that you agree.
That's what he's there for.
Lance, the development to the west of that proposal at Brookstone, is that Quail Creek or whatever they call it? Is that right? Is that correct?
Across the street?
Well, next to your potential development, is that correct? Is that Quail Creek? Is that the name of it?
Yes, sir, across
Is
the
that,
street.
is that an issue?
No,
I mean,
sir.
as far as any
Not that I'm aware of.
impacting on any drainage for,
No, sir, not that I'm aware of, no, sir.
all right.
The last thing that's mentioned on here is the engineer for Parker Place is also looking at, basically, when all this was originally designed the design happened where it choked back additional water. In other words, pre-development, as it set raw land, it allowed so much water to go down Marty Burat ditch. When they finished the improvements, less water was going down that ditch. So just like outlined here with Mr. Turner, we're looking at, or he's looking at some numbers that will allow a greater outfall to go down here. And our developer has said, look, we want to be part of the solution. If we move forward with this, we'll be part of that solution to help all this. So that's another solution that's being considered and looked at and studied right now. Again, we're not involved in that project in particular, but we want to be part of the solution. So if that's the case. So with all that being said, just wanted to make sure that looking at our piece, if we looked at just our piece of property in a vacuum per se, by itself, we meet ordinance with post-development flows, which means after it's built, is less than pre-development flows as it sits today. Looking at taking into account the other issues out here that was brought up, is there are things being done to help with those issues. Now, with that being said, the other problem that was brought up, which has nothing to do with Parker Place at this point, but there's a ditch along our northern property line that actually splits. It goes both ways on the backside of Parker. Now, it obviously it's overgrown, that kind of thing. We actually looking at what we need to do in there, and if we come in there and some of our drainage goes there, we make a bigger ditch or anything, we're going to have to do some improvement to that ditch. There's a 15-foot drainage servitude existing there today, and then if we have to, we will put another drainage servitude on our side. That's issues that get brought up during the construction plan phase where we're looking at the flow. We're looking at things. Right now it's a ditch, but is the ditch adequately sized? Is it proper servitudes? Is it need to be maintained? Things like that adjacent to our subdivision we would definitely look at.
On that 15-foot, y'all prepared to closely look at that and maybe make some
Absolutely.
change?
Absolutely, because we're gonna be flowing
To improve
that
the
way.
flow.
We have to make sure that the water that either we put in a ditch on our side or improve that as an overall ditch, we have to make sure that we don't put our water on somebody else's property. So we have to make sure that's done properly.
Mr. Murphy, is that a commitment from you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we have a lot of interested citizens out there that live around this development. I'm sure they're wondering what's going to hold your feet to the fire to do that. Is that something that staff would be involved in, or once it's approved, then it's up to the developer?
My name is Sean Sharon with the Engineering Review Agency. Mr. Murphy is correct that during the construction plan process, actually on the checklist, you'll see provide approved preliminary plats, planning commission minutes to make sure that they're aware. They also provide the information to us that any contingency items should a project be approved. Some things just don't show up on the plat after it gets approved.
Okay.
That
So you put
that's
that,
another check to make sure whatever
you put
those
that on a
items are.
checklist or as a
Yes,
contingency?
construction plan checklist. It's the same one we see at the website. At the very end.
What's to hold them to that checklist?
That's part of the review process. They have to, that's part of the construction plan approval. Their next step, or anyone that gets a project approved, is to get to construction plans approval. They have to go through the checklist with the approval of both Department of Public Works and Engineer Review and Agency. And that's one of the items we make sure they're addressing.
Or what?
Or they don't get a set of plans approved, which they need that.
You understand that, Mr. Murphy?
Yes, sir. We can't move forward with this project without construction plan approval. We have to get a permit from the parish to build this project. We go through extensive amounts of review, and then inspections while we're under construction to make sure of all that. So we go from start to finish. And by the time we get to the final plat, we're back up in front of the planning commission again, asking for approval. If there's any punch list items and if there's anything not constructed properly, it pops up in that punch list and that final inspection and so forth.
This is
Yes, sir.
prior to a shovel going in the dirt. This is at the planning stage, right?
Yes, sir. The next step would be, just to kind of give y'all a little bit of what happens next. If we get approval here tonight, we'll go ahead and we'll start what they call a topographic survey. We'll go out with our survey crews. You've seen them with the little guns. We go out there and we'll check everything. We'll bring that back into the office. Engineers look at everything. They'll design it, put it on paper. We'll submit it to the engineering review agency. They have a checklist. They also have engineers looking at everything, checking over our shoulder to make sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. Make sure that we're meeting all the ordinances. We're meeting what we need to do, and then after it's all said and done, we'll get a permit. But not until everything is 100% complete.
Where do you live?
Where do I
I'm
live?
just joking. I want to make sure that you're around. That's all.
I'd like to back up just a little bit. I was hoping you'd address something that, with regard to the retention pond, and again, this is for everyone sitting behind you. When you dig a retention pond, obviously it's to buy time so that you're storing water that's not going through ditches and hopefully not flooding anyone.
Yes.
But what happens when that retention pond, let's say we have a 25-year event, and that retention pond finally fills, and it's at capacity? Now what happens?
Well, keep in mind, also as per policy is, we actually we can maintain the 100-year within our banks, so it's not just a 25-year.
For how long? Because the entire area is going to be inundated with the same flooding, so your drainage is going into areas that's receiving equal amounts of water and probably is flooded, which would hinder the flow from your retention pond.
Well, sir,
and that's true anywhere.
Right,
not
that's what I
just
was going to
here.
say. Once water gets up to 100-year and you're there,
Yeah.
I mean, there's no place for it to go.
Just everyone floods. I mean,
it's there.
Whether you have.
Right,
whether this
it
project is
can
approved
only
or
get
not.
out as fast as your outfalls allow.
Oh, sure.
So,
You had a comment. You look like you were going to comment on that. His question? No, I'm sorry.
yeah. Yeah, you can have this one.
Oh, no, they're coming after this. Comes after him.
Okay, this is what we exactly did.
Oh, okay, well, you can take that one back.
That's all I have at this point, unless you have any other questions.
No, I'm comfortable. Any questions?
We'll reserve the right to call you back.
Yeah, right. Don't leave. 3 minutes, right?
Mr. Cohen, you're up next.
Yes, sir. I wanted to make a point about the document that you looked at. It's even labeled drainage problem identified by the Ascension Parish Engineering Department. It
That's the
went
one I
out.
just handed
The
to
one
us?
we just got?
Yes, sir, this one
Okay.
right here. We didn't have we weren't giving any input into this. Our engineer was not asked to give input, but this is more of a product.
On the screen, so everybody can see.
Yeah, more of a product of the commiseration. I don't know how to work this.
They're gonna turn it on.
Oh, it was more of a product of the, well, I don't think anybody can see it. Zoom. I don't know what that'll get, but when you go to the second page, you'll see the Parish Engineering Department believes there are 4 possible options to address this issue.
What number are you on?
This
The
is
last page?
The last page.
Okay, I'm sorry.
where,
Conclusion.
where he lists, the author of this that I'm told is a Mr. Turner. Is that right, Derek? A Mr. Turner, and who, option A is not worthy of discussion. It basically says do nothing and flooding continues, or number 2, he talks about see if Parker Place 1 has any responsibility to try and correct the problem. Then he makes the comment, but they did revise the inlets to the weir openings. But the focus is on C and D. So the Parker Place developer, without admitting any responsibility, but knowing that there are some problems out there, has taken on the task of achieving not only the changes in the weirs that Mr. Turner has a comment somewhere in here that says it's helping. It has helped. He didn't say it solved it, but it's just one of the factors working into this. The flag gates that are being installed, we understand from the engineer for Parker Place that those are going in now. And the email will tell you, and this would be the email from the engineer named Mickey Robertson, stating in his last paragraph of his email on April the 14th that they're in the process of preparing the revised drainage calculations to assess remedial efforts associated with the pond outfall. So, as we pointed out earlier, there's corrective action being taken here, where the weirs were. Here's the outfall. That corrective action is being discussed, and the flap gates are going to be installed there. Now, we tell you this. Let's go back to March. We didn't know this. I don't know that the parish engineer knew it. She had just been in discussion with the developer's engineer for Parker Place, but what we believe is that the weir corrections had been made by the time our hearing came up. It wasn't really discussed. We got the letter from the parish engineer right before the hearing that approved our drainage plan and had this admonishment in it. So there really wasn't time for our side to deal with it, and I don't blame the parish's engineer for it either. I mean, she was pulling together what she could get pulled together for the hearing. So, but the point I'm making is that since that time, where the problem was identified specifically with Ms. Allman, it looks like efforts are being made to resolve that. I say all that to say I want you to know that, and these are the parish's recommendations that these be done. and the Parker Place engineer is apparently going through the processes to do the calculations to get these things done. So he's already done, their group has already done one of the three recommendations, the weirs. They're going into it, installing the flap gates, and he's studying the outfall to increase, to get more movement of water downstream through whatever this Marty Burat ditch. So those things are happening, but I will tell you this. In your dialogue with Mr. Murphy and with Sean and Mr. Brock, I mean, what you've come to realize is that a lot of this stuff that goes into what's the impact going to be comes up during the construction phase. When we're preparing the construction plans, and even Ms. Bro, the parish engineer, in her letter said, you know, we're going to be looking at your calculations on hydrology and whatever the other thing was that they look at to determine if the water solutions are there. But again, she made the point not to exacerbate, don't make it worse. Mr. Murphy's already spoken to indicate to you that our study shows it's going to make it better, not worse. We're not putting more water on it. We're reducing the capacity that's going into it right now. Parker Place, they're having problems. Those problems existed before we ever got here, and they were already taking this water. In our construction phase, Mr. Murphy's already said, look, that didn't get discussed on February the 10th. I mean, like I said, it just got lost out there. But during that construction phase, that's when our engineering group has to convince the engineering review agency that we're taking steps to determine whether that ditch has the capacity, whether it just needs to be cleaned out, or whether it just needs to be expanded. But our whole point of this, and here I'm coming back around full circle, some things look simple, but my oversimplification is really accurate. We were required at that time to give you a drainage study that was approved by the staff. We gave you that. We were required at that time to give you a traffic study that showed no appreciable impact on traffic. We gave you that. It was approved. We met the criteria for the ordinance. We met it. So legally, we did what we had to do. As an aside on the traffic study, since that time, the parish has implemented traffic fees. Now, traffic impact fees, and they're pretty stiff. I haven't studied the ordinance, but what I've read on comments about it is that if you're subject to paying those traffic impact fees, the traffic study's no longer required. So which no man's land are we in? I don't know, but what I'll tell you is this: if we have to pay the traffic impact study fees, rather, because it was retroactive, then our traffic study don't mean much anymore. It's just pay the price of the ticket and get in.
You talking about the recent impact fees that were approved? Okay, well, that's something that's the homeowner would pay at the time of building permitting.
Yes, sir.
Is that right?
The builder,
So
or whoever's building the home.
You, the contractor, would not pay that.
No, we don't. But that is passed down through.
Well, sure.
And certainly affects the pricing structure of that subdivision. You can be assured of that. But nonetheless, it is something that if this subdivision is subject to those fees and a traffic impact study is not required when you're subject to those fees, then our traffic impact study ought not to be required as well. But what I can tell you is it was required at the time, and it met the minimum criteria.
But you got a B.
Sir?
You received a B on it,
Yes, sir.
a grade of a B.
A grade
So
of a B.
that's good.
I thought it
So
was
that's
good.
a non-issue on impact
Exactly.
fees on traffic. It's a non-issue.
Right. It's a non-issue.
Right.
Yeah, we passed. Because if a B wasn't any good when I was in school, I was in trouble, because I couldn't make any A's.
And your line of work is?
All the way around, I'm afraid.
Who's the developer on this project?
America Homeland LLC.
Is there Mr. Wynn?
It's a
Who's Mr. Kevin Wynn?
Kevin Wynn is I guess, the member of America Homeland LLC.
Is he here tonight?
He's not here tonight, no, sir.
I didn't want to interrupt you earlier in your presentation. You made a comment that I didn't fully understand. You said, and I don't remember exactly what you were speaking of, it was with drainage, but you said we made it better.
We
And
have it, well,
what-
I'm going on the drainage study calculation, and I think y'all discussed it with Mr. Murphy, is the quantity of water that is now going through that pipe has been reduced
Which
over.
pipe?
There's a quantity of water going through, being drained through this
Right.
public system right now, before development. Post-development, the quantity of, correct me if I'm wrong when I say this, Derek, the quantity of water that's going to be going through this pipe has been reduced.
Because you're throttling it back in the.
Choked
Okay.
it back, or you may have said that.
You just, right, but you're really just delaying it. You're not really, you might be making it better for a couple of hours or something, but once everything fills up, in a large storm, everybody's gonna break even on that.
I
Well,
don't know.
and then, we us as engineers look at the peak flows. We look at, everything is based on peak. In other words, as rain happens, you get this little jump, it's called hydrograph, it bumps up. That peak is what we have to control. In other words, when everything, if we're in a drought, nobody cares about drain. You know what I'm saying? So during that rain event, the peak is what controls everything. So we make sure that peak is throttled back, and that's what we're throttling back.
Gentlemen, I think we beat it up. Unless you have some more questions of us, what we're asking you to do tonight is to reverse the Planning Commission, approve the preliminary plat of Brookstone as permitted, as presented to the planning staff and presented to the Planning Commission back on February the 10th, so that we can move forward with the other aspects of the development of the subdivision. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, public comments. Has anyone who's going to speak signed a card?
Yes.
Everyone signed a card? Okay, all right.
Dawn Alamo. Good afternoon.
Hi.
I am Dawn Alamo, and the property that he keeps referring to is my home. I've had that land for 15 years. And just until the subdivision started to be developed in 2014, did I start experiencing issues with water.
What subdivision?
I don't live in a subdivision.
No,
It's-
you said when the
Oh, when
subdivision.
Parker Place
Parker
started,
Place.
well, it really started with Ascension shadows, and that's when we started seeing water held up to our property line, which is acres away from that. So we decided to take on flood insurance just to protect us, because we were scared with it to get that close, just into what's actually the ditch now. It didn't actually cross into our yard, but once they started to build Parker Place, we now hold water to the point that my children can't leave the home in their vehicles because they have cars. My husband and I both have trucks that are higher than, and they lift kits or whatever, but they can't get out in a regular sedan car. But in several of the rains that we have experienced in the last 2 years, I have had water up to not just my front sidewalk, but also surrounding my entire house and the threshold of brick. When you step down, I was in water. That's how surrounded my house has been with water, inundated. And that's when my shop did flood, but it's flooded about 3 times since then. So it hasn't just happened once. It has happened just recently in terms of the last major rain we had earlier this year. And then the rain that we had just recently, the last couple of weeks, no, I didn't get water up to my house, but I did get enough water that my road was impassable. And I just don't feel like I should be subjected to that. living on my own land. And if you would like to just, I don't know if it'll show well, it didn't show at the last meeting well, but this is basically just to kind of put it into perspective, if it will show, I guess, where was that zoom button? Is that it up here? Where? Thank you.
Turn it a little bit.
Zoom, if I can get it to maybe zoom in and turn it for you.
We were sent some photographs, and I think this was some of yours.
Yeah, this is actually my front house, and the water is up to about 1 inch on my foundation up to the first brick. That's how much water is surrounding my house. But I guess the most important thing that I get concerned with here is if they can contain their water and they have water retention ponds, there obviously is a need for them to tie into the other water pond, the other retention pond with Parker Place. So I don't quite understand that need and why, because at this point, any water that adds to that pond is going to exacerbate my situation, because the drainage, the improvement they made on the drainage didn't help, because just weeks ago, that was covered in 3 feet of water. So I know I'm out of time, but I'm just curious how that relates into why, because it is any amount of water is going to exacerbate that problem from here on out. So we haven't resolved any issues. They're trying, and they've attempted to, but we haven't resolved it. So,
Thank you.
thanks.
Jeff Pettit.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello there.
Thanks for y'all's service on this appeals
Oh,
board.
thank you.
If I understand the purpose of this appeals board from reading the Home Rule Charter, and Mr. Martin, please correct me if I'm in error, it's to rectify any errors by the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's to see if the judgment of the denial of the preliminary plat for Brookstone was arbitrary or capricious. That's the way I understand the purpose of this board. What you're looking for, I think, is any legal error in judging why the plat was originally denied. Now, with that in mind, what I've heard from Mr. Murphy and Mr. Khan is that since it was denied in February, since then we mentioned, I think, a March 9th date, a March 23rd date, where this was done. Since the original denial, improvements have been made to the drainage plan, which tells me that the original submission is not what is being presented tonight. So my question to y'all, is this appeals board going to act as a substitute or in lieu of the Planning and Zoning Commission, their original judgment? What's supposed to be considered tonight is the original ruling on the original submission, not any remedies that have been proposed or worked out between staff and the developer and their engineers. What is supposed to be judged is the original submission, which was flawed. It was admitted, it was said by Rhonda Broad, our drainage engineer, in that February meeting, that we don't know where the problem is. We don't know why homes are flooding like Mrs. Alleman's. We don't know. And that's been, now, Mr. Murphy has suggested that they're trying to do improvements, working with Mr. Turner and our drainage staff, and with Mr. Robertson, Mickey, who developed one of those subdivisions on Parker Place in that area. And also Quality has developed at least one up there before this one that's proposed. So they're working together now. Why weren't they working before they made the submission in February? So I submit to you that we're just considering the original submission. It was flawed. It needs to be denied. Thank you.
Would legal counsel mind commenting on those comments there? Expand on that?
So let me ask the question. So we should ignore any improvements or changes that are in the process of being done or taken care of?
Well, I'm not sure any new paperwork was submitted. You're gonna have to ask Lance, but I think, the drainage study that was submitted is the same drainage study that was submitted at the February 10th meeting, correct?
Yeah, correct.
And to address the question that Mr. Furman just asked, what we're bound by is what the code says under the appeal procedure in 4092. And basically what it says is that you guys shall review the record of the Planning Commission's public hearing, the written record of the applicant, which was submitted and, presented to you, and then the provisions of the Unified Land Development Code, and then you render a decision on the appeal, whether to overturn it or to keep it in place. Anybody else?
Brandon Dufresne. Chris Baudin.
Hello, how y'all doing?
Hello.
I just found this out a few hours ago. I just had a couple of concerns on here. I live right here on this property. I don't know if they can see the piece. Let me get it right up here. Is it up there? Right here. I noticed today it was brought to my attention about a sewage treatment plant that they wanting to put right here. My son lives right here with my grandchildren in a mobile home. The sewage treatment plant being really close. I just asked that I'm not against the subdivision at all, but I asked that the parish and the subdivision developers or whatever take in consideration where they're putting this thing at. Maybe move it a little further back. I mean, it's really, really close to the line. If they would just get with me. And right here is my only concern. I know this is open land. I know a lot of them worry about the drainage. The water drains across from me. Only concern I have is here and here. Back up in here, it's low. If they build all this property up around me, what's going to happen? I don't want it to cause me to flood, because I don't have a problem with flooding where I'm at. It drains fine. Even with the big storm we had, it drains fine. It does stay a little wet back up in here for a little while. But, I mean, the only thing I ask is that they consider that sewage treatment plant where they're putting it at to move it a little further away.
Well, that you got to appreciate the fact that comes under the sewer treatment plant, doesn't come under any of what we're looking at. Just as a common courtesy, I would think that you would want to approach the parish on this. And if I were in your shoes, that's what I would do.
Yes, I was able to go and look at two of these plants. Somebody brought me that owns some property around here. One of them being by Lowe's is the same kind of plant. Basically, they put in these areas. They're used to this. And they're noisy and everything. I mean, and it's right in the back door. And I'm worried about the drainage coming across if they're going to build it all the way up around. Nobody's ever contacted me on it. That's all I.
It's a good point.
That's all I have to say. They just get with me on that.
Good, thank you.
I'm for the subdivision. I ain't against it. So.
Well, I would just recommend that you contact Lance or.
Why don't you talk to Mr. Murphy or somebody like that?
That's fine. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Keith Lorette.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Hello.
Thank you
Hi.
for allowing me to speak. I live on Parker Road. My home is right at the beginning of the school zone. In what was said earlier today by Mr. Cohn in the traffic study, Mr. Murphy, I think it was, looking at the dates that traffic study was, it appeared to be on a holiday time, and he said it was like 6 to 8 in the morning. There is a heavy amount of traffic on that road. It backs up to my driveway when they drop off in the morning and in the afternoon. I've had people, I have a circle drive for my own personal use. I've had people use my circle drive to turn around to get out of the traffic so that they don't get caught up in that traffic of parents dropping off or picking up their children at the end of school. I think initially, when we came on February 10th, the estimation was 56 vehicles that were going to be added to the route. Well, with an 86 plot subdivision, most families are a two-car family. That's well over 56. So that was one of my concerns. Drainage was another issue. The initial drainage that was submitted was that it was going to drain to the north of their subdivision, which is to the south of mine. That drainage ditch that we talked about, yes, it is overgrown. All of our sewer treatment plants dump into that ditch. This last rain we had 3 weeks ago, it was 2 inches, 2.5 inches, 3 inches. It covered all of my sewer.
A question, is that the ditch that, is that the same ditch that we were talking about that they might enlarge? I'm just for clarification.
I don't know. I haven't seen any.
No, I'm asking you about
Yes,
the
sir.
ditch.
It's behind your home?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's me, where the circle
Yeah,
drive. This
so that's
home-
the same ditch they were talking about enlarging or? Okay, I'm just asking, just for clarification.
That was not part of the original, okay? If it's part of the newer one, I can't say. All I know is that if they were talking about running all of this water into that ditch won't support it. So it's a concern of ours. That heavy rain we had, it filled it to where all of our sewer treatment plants that drain into that ditch were underwater. So that's just the concern I have. The original plan didn't say anything. It said it drains to the north and then east to an 18-inch pipe here, and then to this ditch, and then it goes into this pond. I know it was brought out when we were here last time that there's a problem with this pipe draining here as well. So the traffic backs up for the school to mine. So that was another issue. The traffic and the drainage. Health and safety with all of that water sitting in that ditch. Mosquitoes, those types of issues. So that was one of the concerns we all
Man, you
had.
got mosquitoes?
Few. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Councilman Aaron Lawler.
Hi, good evening. I'll try and be brief. We only have 3 minutes here. But everything that we've heard today said about this subdivision was basically said about Parker Place, about we're going to do the drainage studies. It's not going to affect anybody. But we've seen it did. It affected Miss Alamon, and we're hearing the same thing today, that we've done these studies, there's going to be no effect. We heard about a traffic study that was done, that this intersection was a B intersection based on their traffic study. In 2009, the Louisiana Department of Transportation found that that intersection that they found to be a B was the most dangerous intersection in Ascension Parish, and it hasn't been improved since then. That's the one where we're trying to get a roundabout. We need $1.2 million to get a roundabout because that's the most dangerous intersection in Ascension Parish. Yet they found it to be a B. The traffic studies aren't worth the paper they're written on. We haven't had a traffic study in this parish that found that there's any effect. So apparently, we shouldn't have any traffic in this parish. But we do. The traffic studies are worthless. The drainage studies are worthless. We get these drainage studies done, there'll be no effect, yet everybody around the subdivisions are flooding. Now, there's a reason this subdivision was denied. It's because we've seen the effects of it. The traffic studies and the engineering studies are based on faulty information. If you're going to base it on what's going on in Parker Place and what we're going to do with their outflows and how it's going to go into theirs, but obviously they were wrong because it's flooding everybody else, then that traffic study and that drainage study is worthless. And that's the problem that we're having right now. Now, there are health and safety issues. If you add more people to the most dangerous intersection in the parish, what is that going to do to the intersection? It's going to make it more dangerous. When we had the high school right down the road, which may be done in 3 or 4 years, was that even in the traffic study?
Is this the most dangerous intersection in the parish?
In a sense, yes, it is. Louisiana Department of Transportation, you can look at the January 15th, 2009, it was in the Creole and in the Advocate. And we're going to add more cars to that. Did that traffic study take into account, they said they look into the future, the high school that they already own the land for, that they're planning to build there? I guarantee it didn't take that into account. So that's going to be an extremely dangerous intersection with a bunch of high school kids driving it. And we're just going to add more traffic, more people, more water to these areas. You know, the CDC has just come out and said that Zika is a serious problem. It's in Louisiana. We have cases of it. It's not a laughing matter. When you add more water that's going to be standing water in these ponds, that's going to result in more mosquitoes. They've just found that the Zika virus actually affects adults also. It's not just pregnant women and children. So we could have a serious health problem here. That's the reason this was rejected the first time. Right now, everything we've heard is speculation. We think we're going to do this because we think this will happen based on what they may be doing at Parker Place, and we're going to do this because we think it'll work. There's nothing concrete.
Wait, let me ask you this, though. I turn to your employees.
Are they here, though? Mr. Turner, Bob Turner,
Well,
Ms. Rhonda?
Lance is here and the other engineer is here. and I asked him if they would hold their feet to the fire on the drainage. And the response I got was yes. So I'm just confused. And now these are your employees now. They work for you. So somebody's not doing their job or somebody's doing their job. And it's confusing to me.
Well, what I say is look at all the other areas where we have flooding problems. Feet aren't being held to the fire. Ms. Alamo is flooding. So I'm going by past performance, what's going on. No, we have traffic problems, but all these studies tell us that there was no traffic impact, that you can build a subdivision and there won't be a problem. They're doing it on Oakland Drive right now that's going to lead into Old Jefferson. These two new subdivisions, that's not going to cause a traffic problem. I guarantee it is. But the traffic study said, don't worry about it. So just something to think about.
Dwayne Bargo.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for your time and thank you for listening to us.
Thank you.
With everything that's been said, it is almost a ditto of February 10th. Keeping in mind with the drainage ditch I'm on Parker Road. I'm right next door to one of the highest properties on Parker Road. And during that rainstorm, we have videos and photos of everything with the water completely covering our septic pipes going into that ditch. In their drainage, those houses that are going to share that ditch, right now it's just undeveloped pasture land. If it becomes built up homes, driveways, concrete, roofing, whatever you may have once that adds into that ditch, we will have a problem backing up septic into our home. I have 2 small children in my home. That causes a big concern. So if there's any democracy left in this country or in this parish, we've done everything short of putting rubber boots on and walking out there in a rainstorm and showing you facts and evidence, not promises and 1,000-page studies. I respect those things, but if they're not done properly, they're, like Mr. Congressman Lawler said, they're not worth the paper that they're written on. So facts and evidence that we have shown over and over again, and by the amount of people that are here, we're for development. If you're not growing, you're dying, so we understand that. But we are worried about our safety concerns, whether it be drainage, whether it be the traffic problems that we have. If you go out on 330 on Parker Road, like you said you did earlier today, we have a growing problem. We had a man killed on our road this year trying to ride a bike on that busy road. So we have known problems, and I hope that however many surveys are done, it doesn't beat. We've done everything short of bringing you to our homes and showing you what we have. We have a couple gentlemen on our side of the street that are retired. They've done their best, made a good living, and own what they have, and that's at risk of being damaged now. So with everything that's been said, we're not trying to be rude or arrogant, but we're stressing with you the problems that we see in the future. They do have retention ponds set up for their subdivision, but not 100% of that water in that subdivision is going to those retention ponds. That is sharing our servitude, which already has known problems. And if you review the February 10th videos of what we did here, there is known problems with our entire watershed. And to put it in simple terms, if you hired a plumber to come into your home and fix a sink and he didn't do a good job and left leaks on it, would you hire him to go into the laundry room and start working on something else? So until those problems are fixed, concrete, black and white fixed, not just promise that we're going to work on it or we're going to work with somebody to try to rectify an idea, we're showing you facts and evidence tonight, so I hope that's heard and understood. Thank you.
Chris Charles.
As stated, I don't know where they got a B for that rating because DOTD did also say that is the most dangerous intersection of Ascension Parish. July 9th, 2015, Tommy Martinez also stated, worst crash rating of any section in Ascension Parish. There's a roundabout scheduled. DOTD has already drawn the plans. It's already been proved. It's waiting on somebody to pay for it. They're building a high school at that intersection. The sign is already up, waiting on the money. They just got a big bump approved already with that. 86 lots are going to produce 56 cars. Does anybody here not own 2 cars at their home? And if you have children, do they not drive? 86 lots, 2 cars. Add some kids in there, 200 cars. How far is the opening from that intersection going to be when the roundabout is built? That's already approved to be built. I can't leave my home at certain times. I live across the street from the school. Let's see. Oh, I want to know when the sign was put out. It's supposed to be put out 10 days prior to the meeting. Last Monday, it was not there. That would be 7 days. I got my notice in the mail to pick up, to be here, my notice Friday evening. I still haven't made it to the, to get that to make sure it's about this meeting. Because I leave at 6:30 in the morning to be at work at 8 o'clock. And then I get home at 6:30 at night. I had to take off work today to come to this. It's the second time I've been here. I know a lot of people, there's a lot of new faces here. Let's see. Are they willing to give us a 15-foot servitude? Because I know I've got 15-foot servitude with the drainage. What guarantee in writing do we have that my home will not flood? Because if y'all approve this and it gets approved, the parish is, from my understanding, full responsible for anything that happens to my home because of this. If I didn't flood before, it gets built, I flood, parish has to pay for it. And that's from my understanding. I have some pictures before we run out of time. Somebody can tell me how to use this. Oh, there we go.
Something up there.
All right.
That's behind your home?
This is behind my home. I live directly across. There's my fence. There's that big drainage ditch we got. And as you can see, the water actually flows from our properties across the ditch onto their property as a natural drainage.
Now, when was this photo taken?
I'd have to pull it up. I can send everything to the council.
Was
Here's
it your-
another one, the ditches.
But that was your photo?
Yes.
Well, I mean, it was like a week ago, a month ago?
I'd have to see. I have so many photos that show this. I'm out of time, but
I was just trying to determine how large of an event, rain event was this, when you took the picture?
anything 2 to 3 inches, it happens. I guess they don't want me to show it. Here's my truck underwater, parked in my yard. This is underneath my carport. There's 4.5 inches of water. Here's my front door. It's 2 inches from my front door. I live on Parker Road in front of the school. Ridiculous. I have 440 feet of 4-inch perforated pipe in my house, at my yard that I've placed. If there's nowhere for the water to drain to, it doesn't how much drainage you have. My neighbor's yard, 3.5 inches of water, the whole entire yard, and it drains back onto that property that they want to put a pond on. But they want to introduce water into this ditch. It's a natural drainage for our properties. Just like Parker Place 1 was, a natural drainage for our properties that was destroyed. Thank y'all. I'm sorry I went over.
That's all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul Underwood.
Good afternoon.
Hello, sir.
Yes, I live on Parker Road, about the middle from 44 and 929. I live near the school, and at mornings from 8:10 till 8:40, I cannot get out of my driveway. In the afternoons, I came in this afternoon, and 18 cars was backed up before I could get to my driveway. That's a 2-lane highway, and it is almost impossible to get up and down. And when you add 2 more subdivisions to this area, it's going to make the traffic terrible. High school down there is going to have 1,500 to 1,600 students. And the 11th and the 12th graders, half of them drive. And how is it going to be possible to get up and down Parker Road when there's that much traffic added to it. And it is really flooding in the back of my lot. Water comes up to, I have a utility shed in the back, and it comes up under that utility shed. And that's with the 2.5 to 3.5 inch rain in 4 or 5 hours. And it's people, when I moved there, I didn't have that problem, but now I'm having that problem. And especially since the school has been there about 6 years, it has made the traffic terrible on Parker Road. It's a cut through from people coming from down in Livingston Parish. They'll come that way and they'll go to 929 and go back to 42 and go through there. And it's very, very bad. The traffic is as bad as it is in Baton Rouge and worse in many cases. So I asked you to please consider that when you make your decisions on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Councilman Doc Satterley.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Doc.
One of you asked a very important question this evening. I apologize, I don't remember who. You asked our staff, what was the grade, and I believe it was implied level of service of Parker when it was built? Unfortunately, gentlemen, it took our zoning official, Lance Brock, to say, I'm not sure. I'm not taking a swipe at all at Lance. Lance is a very competent individual for what he does. But I have to repeat what Councilman Lawler told you earlier. That question would have been more appropriately asked to our traffic engineer, Mr. Bob Turner, who I saw leaving the courtroom as I was coming in. I don't know why. I think you should ask why. I think he's been in front of my committee, strategic planning, half a dozen times or more. Or maybe not that many, but several times. Doing level of service work in the parish, testifying in front of us and so forth. Very, very competent engineer and was here at the preliminary plat. Not taking a swipe at our CSRF representative, but he was not. In fact, I heard his name mentioned several times tonight when the folks from Quality and their attorney spoke, as well as Miss Rhonda Bro. That's our parish drainage engineer. But they're not here tonight, and I think you really should wonder why. I also have in my hand a copy of your agenda, and everybody can see it has 7 items on it. Noticeably absent is a public comment period. Now, I'm very pleased to see the public was allowed to speak. You did well, gentlemen. My concern, however, is that agenda was published in the courtroom downstairs, front door, published in the media, in the Pelican Post, perhaps elsewhere. I don't know. I've been out of town for the last 3 days at my fishing camp in Slidell. And I know this. I got a lot of calls. Doc, is the public invited? Well, yeah, it's a public meeting. Will they be allowed to speak? Well, I don't know. The agenda doesn't have a public comment period. Well, that's my concern. Should I come? That's really bad. Mr. Cody Martin testified when you asked him a question about how do we make this decision, and he said something very important to you, that you are required by our ordinances to read the record. I would ask you, gentlemen, that means at the P&Z meeting that led up to this. This is an appeal, and I agree with everybody tonight. This has to do with, did they err? Not so much what's been fixed since then. But did you read the minutes? I'd like for the record, each one of y'all to state that you did. Did you look at the Channel 21 film?
Yes.
So that you could actually, if these people aren't going to be here, at least see the questions that were asked to Ms. Bro
Yes.
and Mr. Turner. Did everybody look at that Channel 21 film?
I did.
Because you wouldn't have had to ask the question what the level of service was at Parker. Thank you for listening.
Chase Malassa.
Hi, how are you?
I'm Chase Malson. I live on Tide Drive in Rhonda Place subdivision behind the LeBlans on 42. So I, live, I don't know, maybe 2,000 feet from this intersection. A few things I like to say is that I've heard a few residents that live directly on Parker across from the current school. And I know for a fact there's 4 or 5, maybe 6 residents who had signs made, do not block their intersection because of this traffic they speak of every day in the morning and afternoon of the school traffic trying to get in and out. And I see there's a $2 million budget for planning for the high school that will be there directly on side of that school in the next 2 to 3 years. And, they mentioned numbers of high school students, kids, everything that's going to be also traveling these, this intersection here every single day. And I'm curious how every subdivision we build has 0 traffic impact, but the traffic gets worse, and we have recently implemented traffic impact fees. I'm up for debate with anybody how every subdivision cannot affect traffic, but traffic gets worse, and now we think it's so bad that we should, implement traffic impact fees. So I'm not exactly on board with how, 56 cars, I guess some of those people ride bikes to and from work. And as Mr. Lawler also stated, this was a DOT publication, a few news outlets and everything, that this is an F. It's highly referred to as one of the most dangerous. I have an 8-year-old daughter, a 2-year-old boy riding my vehicle every single day at this intersection and in front of that school. And I can tell you right now, if you are not on top of your A game, better hope you got some good seat belts. And also, I believe this is less than 1,000 feet from said, And also heard something about they use legitimate engineers on looking at this drainage into Black Bayou and everything. I'm curious if the legitimate engineers were standing on side of the road looking at Black Bayou 4 or 5 weeks ago when we set new record highs for, I don't know, maybe the 4th, 5th year in a row. And if they were looking at Black Bayou then and looking at the rest of these people's yards here and there, trying to, and that's, that's just our everyday living. When that happens, they hope that their house that isn't in a flood zone doesn't flood. And I also understand that the Planning and Zoning Committee has the right to have the citizens' health, safety, and well-being. They have that discretionary authority to deny this, taking that in consideration. And I'm hoping what y'all have heard tonight, that health and well-being of these people is at risk. It's not opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it. Mr. Murphy?
Just wanted to address a few things and let Mr. Cohn come up and close it out and address anything that I might have missed. The reason we've been bringing up what's happening is because as part of the drainage approval that night, they asked us to look at that.
I don't think we can do that.
Our submissions were not flawed. They were approved by the parish. The traffic study was approved by Mr. Turner, and our drainage study was approved by Ms. Bro. But as part of that approval, they asked us to take it one step further, and that's what we did. And that's why we brought that up tonight, to let y'all know there were things in the works. But our submissions were not flawed. So just looking at what was submitted for that meeting, you can look at those approvals and see that those approvals did happen. Only thing I can speak on the traffic study is the 56 cars, it was approved. The 56 cars is based on, I'm assuming it's 56, they kept bringing it up, it's a peak hour. It's a peak hour. It's not all day. It's a peak hour in which that's how traffic studies are done. They look at the 24 hours, they put all that together, and they find out when the most traffic is on that road, and then during that time, how much traffic will the subdivision contribute? In this case, it's 56 vehicles.
In 1 hour? In 1 hour period of time?
Yes, sir. So we're still going to have all the other vehicles entering in there during the non-peak hours. We've already talked about the people along Parker and that ditch. If we get there, we can't tie into that ditch. We'll have our own ditch. If we still need to take that ditch and improve it, then that's what we need to do. And if it's not draining, we don't want drainage. In other words, if their ditch is overflowing and it's coming onto our property, and that's what some of those pictures showed and people said, then we need to improve that ditch to make sure it doesn't overflow onto us. But at the same time, we don't want to overflow onto them as well. So, and a lot of these people will have the pond in their backyard. They could handle that overflow if it absolutely had to happen. But in this case, we're going to evaluate that ditch and see what we need to do to that ditch. I guess that's all I have at this point.
As a postscript to Derek's comment, the business about, as we pointed out, whether the ditch needs to be improved or not, it comes up in the construction plan phase, and there's a prove-up process that takes place. Just to be clear as well, some of the residents have spoken as if we are considering a second application for a subdivision tonight. I'll be the first to confess I'm not really sure what the standards are mandated by this body, because they weren't technically, at least spelled out that well for me in the ordinance. So we're just sort of taking a shotgun approach here to do what we think we need to do to make sure our bases get covered and you get all of the information that you need, or you won't. Because if we leave something out that you won't, we certainly want you to tell us. We're not trying to hide anything. But there is just one application. You are reviewing the decision on February the 10th. Now, one of the things that's been talked about is health, welfare, and safety of the public, and discretion. That sort of dumps off into the legal realm. I've tried to stay away from that. But I will say this. The role of the Planning Commission, in my view, is administrative. It is to look at the evidence to determine if this developer has met the threshold requirements that have been mandated by the elected public officials and the code of ordinance that was adopted by those officials, brought to vote in the parish, or otherwise had checks and balances that were built into it through negotiation or otherwise. That was part of the legislative process. The Planning Commission is not intended to be a body that makes it up as they go along. Rather, the Code of Ordinances embodies the health, safety, and welfare criteria thought most important by your public officials. Now, Mr. Giroux, in one of his comments, talked about, during the construction phase, look at the checklist. And it's a long, detailed checklist. These are things that were created within the ordinance and the planning department, the planning staff, to help them and help the developers try and figure out what the base criteria is going to be. What do we have to show now to say we have met the conditions imposed for development in the parish? Now, if the discretion of the Planning Commission, in my view, is to determine did we meet that criteria, then that's going to be administrative. That's why I pointed out to you gentlemen up front and throughout this process, we met that criteria. Brookstown is a subdivision that met the criteria not to go be built, but as a preliminary plat approval. We can throw water on the drainage study. We can throw water on the traffic study. The point is, the traffic study met the criteria, was approved by the parish, the engineering group and staff, and so was the drainage study. It was improved by the staff. Now, we talked a lot about it, but I think my point here is, without waxing too far into the legal realm and start talking about case law, because when you get there, everything's,
No, that you're gonna lose this guy.
yeah, there's another place for that. That place isn't necessarily here. But what is here, I think, is to impress upon you gentlemen that our position on this is that you have one subdivision submittal, we're not glossing over. In other words, if you wanted to say, I wanted to hear this stuff, you certainly, I think, can hear it. We gave it to you, not because we're trying to create another application, because we've candidly stated we didn't know this stuff in February either. Had we known it, we certainly would have been using it as part of our evidence at that proceeding. But if you focus on the evidence that's in the binder, and we gave it all to you, you got it all. More than you ever wanted, would ever want to look at. What it shows is we met the threshold criteria, and we believe that this body should determine that the Planning Commission did not have the discretion to deny the preliminary plat, that the Planning Commission should have approved the preliminary plat, and then let the other development criteria proceed along its path as it always does, either good or bad, and to whatever end that becomes. And that becomes an engineer issue on our side and an engineer issue on the parish side. Whoever their engineering review agency is, that might be Mr. Chereau or one of his colleagues. But nonetheless, we again ask you to reverse the decision of that Planning Commission on February 10th that denied this preliminary plat and approve it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Okay. Staff, we, in our packet, we received information on the appeal, and the bottom two-thirds of it refers to your recommendations. Okay? I don't know if you want me to read these or not, but basically, you're saying that they have met the criteria, as Mr. Combs just said, but you also recommend that negotiations must continue with the parish utilities department regarding sewer treatment. And then also on the drainage study, it looks like there's a comment here about, let me find it, because of frequent flooding issues on the adjacent properties in a drainage impact study that has not yet been approved by the engineering department, staff cannot recommend approval at this time. Could one of you comment on that?
Yes, sir. This information gets sent out a week or so, or 10 days, a week before the meeting. So basically, this was sent out, and then if you look a little bit below that, staff explained that there was a change in the drainage study and will be approved. So basically, she stated that the approval to the drainage study was given, except so the engineering firm to state and approved during the construction phase. Kind of like what you heard before, that the construction phase, those things will be taken care of or worked out. Yes, sir.
Okay, I don't see that. I see traffic study has been reviewed and approved.
Yes, sir.
I don't see them
Right. If you look underneath staff recommendations, the third paragraph, I guess you could say.
Well, that's what I just read. It says has not been approved by the engineering department. Staff cannot recommend approval this time. This is what I have, dated April 18th. Which was, well, I guess at today's meeting, I guess.
Yes, sir. I know that on the
This is what we received today.
Okay. Yes, sir. On the packet itself, if you look in the packet that was submitted to you, it states that that staff recommendation, and then underneath that, underneath the minutes, I guess you could say, the minutes itself, it states that that there was a change in the way the drainage study will be approved, and stated that given approval to the drainage study, at this point, the engineer firm has to state approved during the construction phase. Just what we stated before, at the construction phase, that these things will be taken up, will be done.
I don't see that. guess I'm missing it, or, you see it? On the drainage?
Did you get the packet itself that
Right.
explains on the minutes? That's what it is, the minutes.
Minutes?
Yes, sir, it's the minutes. Yes, sir.
The February 20th, February 10th meeting.
Second page?
He's referring to this.
Okay, I see.
Well, okay, this is where Ms. Bro explained
Yes, sir,
there's been a
correct.
change.
Yes, sir. In the minutes itself. You're looking at the write-up, and then you need to look at the minutes. Yes, sir.
I see.
From the actual meeting
Okay, now I
that
see it,
occurred.
yeah.
Right there.
Yes, sir.
I didn't have those minutes.
So staff's position on this at this point is that they've met all the criteria. and-
Yes, sir.
And you feel it's a
Yes.
viable project.
Correct, yes, sir.
Lance, or Cody, what's the bond amount on this project? Cody or Lance?
I don't know it off the top of my head. I know it.
What's the bond amount on this thing to get this
I
project
don't
going?
think
You
the
got a
bonds are
bond
set
or
at-
something?
The bonds aren't set at this point in time. The bonds
How
are set
much?
The bonds are set at the end once construction is done.
There's one on Parker Place though, right?
Yes.
Right now as we speak? That hadn't been satisfied yet, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
we're still holding the
it's
bond.
still pending on that, right?
That's correct.
All right, so gentlemen, what are your wishes?
Well,
Go ahead, you make a motion.
looking at, in my opinion, looking at the evidence and what's our responsibility as a appeals board, is if the criteria is met, then we ought to approve the preliminary plat. A lot of y'all were talking about drainage, and a lot of people in the public were talking about traffic, everything else. This particular parish in 1990 had 50,000 people. Right now, you got 120,000 people. I live in Donaldsonville. We still got 10,000 people over the last 20 years, okay? So with that comes problems. The council, which I think several of them spoke here tonight, should either create a moratorium on these subdivisions or do something. I don't know what to tell them to do. But this problem's gonna continue to creep up and come back, we may be back here in 10 more years. But it's gonna happen because of the situation. You've got a tremendous amount of people influxing into the parish on the East Bank. So with that comes problems. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I've been here in this parish for 60 years on that side of the river, and I have empathy for y'all. With the flooding and everything else, in the traffic, I don't even come here at 5 o'clock, okay? Because I know what y'all going through. However, with the criteria being met, I'm not in a position to deny it. I cannot. I have to approve this preliminary plat.
Do you make a motion to that?
Yes, I do.
Before you make the motion, let me just tell you, what you're going to be voting for, or what you need to make a motion for, is either to uphold the decision of the planning commission, which was denied the plat, or to overturn it.
So you
Vote to overturn. I make a motion that we overturn the
been moved, Ken?
plan.
Hey, before y'all vote,
Just a minute.
is there a reason that any of us came here tonight? And can the secretary just say that their stuff was approved and read the ordinance?
Wait, I'm sorry, just a minute. You're out of order. We're entertaining the motion right now.
I was hoping we do comments first before we made motions. You're looking for me to second it, huh?
The second or not?
Yeah, I can't second it at this point. Can I have comment
Yeah.
at this point?
Yeah.
Well, you have to excuse us, first meeting, so we're setting precedents here. First thing I want to say is, I'm a pro-business person. I haven't had a salary on a job since 1979. I've been in business for a long time, and I appreciate what the local businessman has to go through, entrepreneur has to go through to make a living. It's not easy. And I want projects like this to be approved with all the homework done, and with nothing but success of not only the developer, but for the homeowners that move into this parish, and they're trying to move into this area. So with that in mind, I'm for these type of projects. I'm not at all against it. However, my first commitment to me is the people that live there at this point. I'm not for a project if it's going to have adverse effect on the people that already live there. And that's my concern. And I know there was a lot that was addressed, that the developer and Mr. Cohn addressed those issues. However, we're talking about studies. We're not talking about the roads being built and rooftops in place that prevent saturation of water into the ground. And I'm not a hydrologist, so I can't address that specifically. But my concern is once all this is built, will these drainage studies hold up? And we don't know that. We can speculate they will. And I'm not 100% sold that it will. I would like to say that it without a doubt it would, but I don't know if anyone here can say definitely, without a doubt, that these studies will prove to be the final on this project. And so it's difficult for me to approve this or vote for it at this time, but I would hope that this project would continue and all the issues would be addressed so that it becomes a project. So that's why I'm not in favor of the project at this time. So should I make a substitute motion?
Well, no, you don't approve this motion.
So,
but with that being said, I do.
Hold on.
I would like to make a motion
You want to go ahead and make the substitute motion on the record?
to uphold the planning zoning denial.
Well,
we're not going to get a second from Ms. Chili on it. So what we'll go ahead and do is we'll have a roll call vote on the substitute motion, which is Mr. Furman's motion.
Okay. I'm for it, of course.
Call the roll.
Mr. Caruso?
No, I'm against it. Against the substitute motion.
And I'm against it. So with that being said, I would second Mr. Russo's motion to deny.
Okay. All right, and that one won't go unanimous, so let's go ahead and.
I'm sorry?
That one won't go unanimous, so let's have a roll call vote on the motion on Mr. Russo's motion.
Okay.
I vote yes to
vote yes to deny.
Override the.
You vote to uphold the decision of the planning commission or to overturn the decision?
Overturn it. I vote to overturn
Okay.
the decision of the planning and zoning commission.
All right, Stacey, if you want to call it. Call
And
the
I-
name so they can vote.
I'm sorry.
To second his motion.
Which is
To deny.
To overturn.
To overturn.
All right, Mr.
And I
Furman.
vote to uphold.
And I would like to make a comment in lieu of that. It's
Overturns, one uphold.
it's just, I really empathize with the people and the comments that I've received. It's just that from my perspective, it's hard for me to ignore the recommendation of the planning and zone, of the staff, as far as the traffic study and as far as the drainage. And it's just hard for me to go against that. So, and that's why I stand, and that's where I stand in this. So, gentlemen, if there's no other comments, we adjourn. Thank you.